Okay, hello, and this is our project on single-use plastics. I'm Christina Shepik.
I'm Blake Fisher.
And I'm Pratik Goswami.
Okay, so we're first going to start off with what single-use plastics are. So according to the NRDC, it is a good that is made primarily from fossil fuel-based chemicals and are meant to be disposed of right after use. It was popularized in the 1970s because it made production a lot cheaper, it was a lot more durable, and it was easier to dispose than traditional glass or paper packaging. So some basic examples of this would be plastic straws, takeout containers, Ziploc bags, water bottles, stuff like that.
So, what is the big deal about single use plastics? Well, according to the NRDC, we as humans produce roughly 300 million tons of plastic each year, and half of those are solely from single use products alone. In a recent report shared by CQ Researcher, the world produced 7.8 billion metric tons of plastic just by 2015. That is more than 1 metric ton per every person alive. This really aided to a creation of a throwaway culture where products are no longer made for the long term and only for short term purposes.
So some of you might be wondering about recycling. So due to the ban placed in 2016, China no longer takes waste from other countries. So basically all of these countries that were sending over their waste to China no longer had that ability and do not have the infrastructure to be able to recycle all of their needs within their country.
So actually the National Geographic shared that roughly 91% of all plastic is not actually being recycled, which is partially due to this ban.
And single-use plastics in particular are traditionally hard to recycle as they're much smaller and fall into machinery, and many facilities do not even allow for single-use plastics to attempt to be recycled. So how are single-use plastics harmful to the environment? Well, you can really break this up into two major components. So when we first think about pollution, plastic pollution is everywhere, including shorelines, soil, drinking water, food, stuff like that. And then a draft science assessment in Canada actually shared that 8 metric tons of plastic enter the ocean annually. That is the equivalent to 1 garbage truckload of plastic into the ocean every minute of every day.
So this led to what is called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is basically an accumulation of microplastics within the Pacific Ocean. This is extremely harmful to wildlife especially. So here's a picture of what the Great Pacific Garbage Patch looks like and 2 examples of how animals have been affected by this plastic pollution. So in this picture right here, it's a whale that was found off of the coast of Thailand in 2018, and it died after eating 80 plastic bags that it thought were squid, and this turtle has a straw lodged up its nose.
So the next major component is carbon emissions. So carbon emissions in general are exponentially growing, but the process of actually making plastic leads to a lot of methane leaking and flaring. And it also is a need for clearing forests and wetlands to have these refineries, and those forests and wetlands sequester carbon. The oil refineries that make up plastic are also one of the most greenhouse intensive industries. To put it simply, also, plastic just produces a ton of waste, so that's also not good for the environment.
So how exactly do we solve the problem? Well, we believe the best solution is to reach the global audience and lower the actual amount of single-use plastics consumed. So basically this is grassroots lobbying or a direct public communications campaign. If people stop consuming as much single-use plastics, companies would then be forced to innovate, whether that be through finding more sustainable packaging or more sustainable production tactics. In the capitalistic society we're in today, money really makes these decisions. So if people stop buying single-use plastics, companies would then be forced to make a change.
There are some other options where government action can change the consumption of single-use plastics. So there's been some bans in China and India and like regulating corporations, but in a capitalistic society, those are 2 relatively difficult solutions to this problem.
So, what is our project? Our project is a Facebook page that talks about the dangers of single-use plastics. We chose the Facebook page because we believe that it is the best platform to reach our target audience. Our target audience is 18 to 30-year-old adults. Additionally, we're doing a public communication campaign. A public communication campaign typically achieves the strongest impact via triggering or reinforcing messages. It allows us to influence the knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors of an audience through organized communications. Our aim is to message directly at the target audience. So our project goal has multiple facets. First off, it's to educate the public on single-use plastics. And next, to show persuasive arguments on why they're bad and dangerous, show consumers how they can enact change, and simply be a place for communication to talk about single-use plastics. How we will accomplish our goals. So we have 3 goals that we have in order to rid the world of unnecessary use of single-use plastics. First off is to educate. Second is to eradicate. And third is to engage change. Through these messaging strategies, we plan to accomplish our goals. First off, education. Education is going to be from different forms of media portrayals of single-use plastics through podcasts, YouTube videos, etc. In order to eradicate, we plan to frame our communication based on morality and ethics in order to eradicate single-use plastics. Another big part is that we will be using visualization to show a lot of the dangers of single-use plastics, yet again, tugging at the morality of the viewer. And finally, to engage change, we will be using emotional appeals, specifically guilt.
So, pre-testing and research. Through pre-testing and research, we wanted to measure the audience's attention, comprehension, and personal relevance. So, to assess our audience's attention, we distributed a self-administered questionnaire in the form of a survey to really gauge our audience's perception to our message. So it's essential that our message specifically attracts our viewers' attention, as there is a sea of campaigns that talk about the environment and the dangers that plastics and other sorts of things have effects on the environment. And so it's important that our campaign specifically garners the attention of our viewers. And we also wanted to assess our message's comprehension. Before a message can really be understood, it needs to be processed and accepted by the viewer. And then we also wanted to make sure that our messages were specifically garnered for each individual person. We wanted to assess personal relevance. We wanted to ensure that our message applied to each of our viewers specifically. Without a personable message, the audience either simply ignores what we have to say or is unconvinced by the actions that we want them to take. So these are the results of our survey. So how the message was received. We believe that our overall message was received very well. According to the statistics, a high % of our audience was engaged and active in keeping up with our posts and our survey, as you saw on the previous slide. Of the 75 people that viewed our survey, 49 of them answered the questions. That's a 65% participation rate. And as you saw on the previous slide, all of them were able to complete the survey fully. Overall, we believe our campaign exposure was extremely high. 40 out of 49 viewers thought that our messages were easy to understand. 43 out of 49 viewers thought our messages were easy to recall. And 30 out of 49 viewers were likely to implement what they learned to their daily life. If that's not engaging change, I don't know what is.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed our presentation.